Steve. Good to see you.
Hey, Stephanie, how are you doing today?
Not too bad. I'm getting past having strep throat again, the joys of parenthood.
Wow. So how are you feeling now?
Very good. But, I was laughing because my husband, David, was like, oh, I feel fine. I'm not getting sick at all. And I'm like, because the kids don't drink out of your water bottle and talk in your face. So...
Yes. So you're kind of getting over it now, or are you right in the throes of it?
No, feeling much better, and it's beautiful weather here in Texas, and
Okay.
has sprung. And so, how's New York doing?
Doing well. I actually just got back from Florida. I was my one of my daughters opened up a beauty parlor and barbershop with her husband in downtown St. Petersburg. So I was there for the grand opening, and the next day was my other daughter's birthday. So we got to celebrate that. It was a double header there from my two daughters, Giovanna and Angela, and came back to New York and back in the throes of things right now.
Good. Well, I'm glad you're back. Is Chapters doing anything exciting this week?
Yes. Well, we have new programming coming up. We're going to be filming at a new studio in Long Island, and also continuing our filming at BronxNet. Tomorrow night, we are interviewing Tony Orlando, who just retired from his touring on Friday at the Mohegan Sun. So that's a big get. That's a big interview tomorrow for our radio show. But this is Kick on Healthy Relationships to the Curb. That's Stephanie McPhail. I'm Steve Vaccaro from the Chapters Network. And Stephanie, you have an amazing book out there that you've been utilizing for the last couple of years. You want to share with our new viewers?
Sure. My book, Being Loved Shouldn't Hurt, is all about my story of overcoming the cycle of toxic relationships. And it's really meant to inspire other people so that no matter how long they've been in a toxic relationship, no matter what they've experienced, they can see that it's possible for them to change and create a life that they're excited to wake up to every day.
And you are doing great things. A lot of them are women around the world, around the country. How's that going for you?
Going very, very well. It's always great to be able to see the impact that, doing this show, doing my podcast, Toxic Love Transformation, having our group programs, doing all this great work. And, it's sad that so many people can resonate with what we're teaching, but it's really inspiring for us to be able to see people who are looking to change and are really creating major differences in not only their lives, but around people's lives, in their surroundings as well.
That's great. And how can people get a hold of that book?
Sure. You can always go. The best place to do is go to my website. And actually, you can go to beinglovedshouldn'thurt.com/links. It's going to give you a whole bunch of free resources, access to my podcast, access to my book. And just, go ahead, download that and get some, the first steps in helping you to heal.
Wow. And you have put out there was an interview that was done a couple of years ago with Denzel Washington. That was some experience for you. I apologize for some of the noise. I'm at a Boys and Girls Club, and they have a free hour here, as you could probably hear in the background.
Nice. Well, and that actually is why we were able to speak with Denzel Washington, was because of your work with the Boys and Girls Club. And, when you called me up and said, hey, do you want to do this? And I said, with Denzel Washington, I didn't know that was on my bucket list, but sure, I will definitely do that. We only got to speak for a few minutes, but, in those few minutes, I think that I really got to experience Denzel in his caring nature and his support of his wife, and he talked about his upbringing from, being a child of a single parent and how important it was for him to have, both of the parents involved in his children growing up. So really great interview, nice and short, but to the point, and just great experience. And looking forward to potentially meeting up with him again and maybe some other really important people that we can have on this show and, maybe some other shows as well.
Yeah, no doubt. We're doing some work directly with him. We're establishing a new Boys and Girls Club of Mount Vernon. So to be continued. So I think we will have part 2 of that interview real soon. But today we have Dr. Labrecque here, and who's doing wonderful, wonderful work. And I can't wait to get to know her and to learn about what she does.
Yeah, let's bring her on. And, I'd love to have her introduce all the great work that she's doing. Hello, Dr. Labrecque. Good to have you.
Hello, Stephanie. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, we're so glad you're here. Tell us a little bit about your background. I know when we spoke, we talked about toxic relationships. What has been your experience with toxic relationships?
Well, I am a psychologist and my PhD is actually in physical therapy. So I work with the mind, body, and spirit as a coach. And a lot of my clients are business owners who struggle either with burnout, overwhelmed, stress, or with self acceptance and trying to be the best. And I think our relationships start with being able to accept ourselves the way we are. Versus when you are in a toxic relationship, that person that you are with is trying to change you, manipulate you, and shape you into some kind of a crazy version that they want you to be and not who you really are. So my experience with, I've been in toxic relationships. I was lucky enough to realize fast enough to get out of them. But very often, yes, you are correct. It starts, I'm very happy to hear that you're working with the kids. Because it starts with how we are treated at home and how our base is built.
So how do you find your clients, like the people that you work with?
I network a lot. I also do a lot of public speaking. I do podcasts like this one. I basically help people who are stuck. Some of them have neurodiversity, being ADHD, or maybe lower on autism spectrum, but predominantly they are very burned out and stressed out, and a lot of them are actually parents, especially mothers who they say, okay, the buck stops here. I don't want to pass those patterns down to my children. I want to be a good role model for my children. Fathers do the same, by the way. I want to be the one who can mimic, who they can mimic and have healthy life and healthy relationships. I work mind, body, spirit. So we work on the mental side of the side, but we also work on the physical side of the life. How do you know that you are in toxic relationship? How does your body tell you that you are in a situation that's not really safe, even if your brain and social programming tells you otherwise? So we go back to roots of how to listen to our whole existence and to be able to discern which is good for us and which is not so good for us.
How are you able to do that? I think that it's really tough when it's your programming, when it's what you've taught, it's what you learn, it's what's automatic. How are you able to get people to change that automatic thought process that they have because of what they've learned growing up?
Well, in psychology, we have this triangle that says thought, emotion, behavior in whatever configuration. I have very extensive training in behavioral, and for me, that's a low-hanging fruit. But I think the first way to change anything, literally anything in your life, first of all, you have to have awareness, right? So we start with, oh, wait, I am not happy. Oh, wait, this is not what I want to live with. And having that awareness, no matter how deep down the drain you are, is the first step. Because if you are not aware of your situation, there is nothing there. Then from then, if we have the awareness, we start to have a little bit more of a use of tools. For example, okay, is this thought a real thought or not? Or do I even have to pay attention to the thought or accept the fact that thoughts are just fleeting? It's a stream of emotions. It's a stream of energy. Kind of like, I like the analogy for my clients of a stick on a river. Your thoughts are the river, and there are sticks on it. And from time to time, there is a stick that you want to pick up, but there are a lot of sticks that you don't want to pick up. So we learn to discern which of those sticks are worth picking up. Who am I? Which ones do I want to pay attention to? And which one I can just say, yeah, no, I'm not going to pay attention to that. And as far as, the early childhood programming and the subconscious, we learn to listen to the body and to be aware where that kicks in. Because again, there is no change if there is no awareness. It always starts with awareness.
Agreed. And I think there's awareness and then there's taking action. So we might be able to be aware of it, but if we keep doing the same thing, it doesn't matter how aware we are. It's got to be about taking action to do something different. And I think, when I work with clients, a lot of times what I see is we live in this automatic reactionary state. Mm-hmm. And we think that we have to act on every feeling that we have. And what I keep reminding them is just because we're angry, just because we're scared, just because we're confused, whatever, sometimes it's a good idea to pause, ask ourselves, why are we feeling these feelings? and see if they're appropriate for the specific situation that we're in.
Oh, totally. And I take it a step further. I teach the 10-10-10, which is it worth my time? Okay, maybe that's the feeling in this moment, but in reality, would this matter? It matters in 10 minutes, 10 seconds, right? We're all in a space, but is it worth my adrenaline and cortisol dump into my body and the inflammation that comes with that? I personally don't pay attention to things that are not more important than 10 months and 10 years. Those are the things that you really need to focus on, the long-term goals. The little pains and aches and disadventures of every day, that's just life. Life is not perfect. That is another thing that I always discuss with my clients, that, media, especially social media, portrays this perfect world where we're supposed to be this perfect mother, perfect, Instagram or Pinterest, making perfect lunches. We are both parents. You coming up of strap. I had a week of stomach flu that went through my kids' school last week. You know where I'm going with that one. And that was my household last week. And life is not perfect. When we expect it to be perfect, then we get really frustrated because the anxiety, depression, and disappointment lies in a gap between the reality and expectations. So yes, and taking action is so important because once you are aware, now you can change it, right? Once you are aware, now you can take the step to get closer to where you want to be, no matter how small the step is. The worst thing you can do is get stuck. And taking a little bit of physical science, as we know, the hardest is to get moving, right? It's much easier to move an object that's moving than to move an object that's stationary. That initial start of everything is always the most difficult. Once you get the momentum, it's much easier. So take even the smallest step in the direction that you want to be. It doesn't have to be jumping over Grand Canyon. It can be as little as saying no to something that's not serving you, but either in relationship with others or in relationship with yourself, because that relationship starts with yourself. How do you treat yourself?
Yeah, that's true. David, I've been
I'm sorry. This is Kick on Healthy Relationships to the Curb. That's Stephanie McPhail. I'm Steve Vaccaro. That's Dr. Karolina Labrecque. And Doctor, I hear what you're saying. How do you navigate, or what tip could you give parents? There's a fine line between enabling and empowering a client or a son or daughter. What advice would you give parents out there?
So that's a tough one as a parent, because it's easier to say than do, right? But it's always the healthy boundary and natural consequence. So we don't have to be, punishing. But if my child forgets their homework, that's on them. Right? That's the consequence. Well, you forgot your homework. Natural consequence is that your grade is going to be lower. And yes, now you're going to go through emotions that go with that consequence. So as a parent, I'm filming standing the ground that this is your responsibility. Now, obviously, this has to be a healthy responsibility. I don't expect a 5-year-old to remember to pack the lunch. I do expect my 10-year-old to be able to remember to pack the lunch. So it's standing in a boundary, and also, understanding that their emotions, and I think especially for mother, this one is the hardest. When they have big emotions, you have to be the solid person, not taking part in those emotions. So if they starting to scream, you cannot start elevating your voice. And we are humans, and because then you escalate and then you model not such a healthy way of communicating. It's being here and now and say, okay, right now, this is not a good time to talk about it because you are not in a space where we can talk about it. And understanding that they are not going to die because they're crying. So that's the enabling stuff, right? We don't have to jump and save them from everything, because we will not save them from everything in the world. And the sooner they learn to proceed through those difficulties in life, the easier the big difficulties are going to be, because we all will, get into some big stuff in our life. There is not a single person on earth that's walking that never had a big stuff happen to them. So the fastest they learn that, okay, this is my emotion, this is me right now, and I can process that. And once that is go, I can attend to the things need to be done, the better. versus if you play into it and try to involve conversation, now you're feeding the monster. Now you're feeding that meat, and if you ever try to argue with a toddler during the tantrum, you know what I'm talking about. It may be the most unreasonable thing about, the shoe being blue and not red today, whatever it is. But if you try to, the longer you arguing, the higher and longer they stay in that state, versus dropping that line and saying, okay, I'm going to be the calm one and I'm going to be the adult here. It's painful to watch sometimes. I can give them a hug. I can validate emotions saying, I know this is so difficult for you right now. This hurts. But I don't have to play into it.
I'm actually thinking of a current client, and I'd love your opinion because, she's a single mom. She's got a 5-year-old and a 2-year-old. She's working, she's going to school, she's doing all of this stuff. And she's been noticing that she has been easier to yell lately. Mm-hmm. And she's aware that she doesn't want to do that. I mean, and she used to not do that, but she's been doing it more so lately. And when I talked to her yesterday, we talked about, being able to get support in areas that she needs support with, and making sure her self-care is at the top priorities. Because when we're really tired, when we're already feeling overwhelmed, throw in that 5 and 2-year-old and you're like, it's just too much. Our ability to deal with is much less. What can someone do if they're in that situation where, you're telling your kid, give me some space, I need a few minutes, and they keep coming after, or they keep, just fighting for your attention when you're working on a bunch of different things? What are some good suggestions that you could give to someone who's in that situation and needs it? Because that's what's happening. I think her buttons are getting pressed even more because she's overwhelmed, and the kids need something and she needs space to complete the assignment she's doing. But, it's tough with a 5 and 2-year-old. They don't understand personal space and boundaries and needing time and all that.
So that one, in that particular situation, but let me backtrack. First of all, the healthiest way to do is to not get to the point when you are, blowing up.
Agreed,
so
yeah.
Knowing yourself, and my kids are a little older, they're 10 and 7, but there were one day or two when my husband wasn't home yet, and I was like, I'm going for a drive, because otherwise the not so nice mama is going to come up in a second and we're going to regret it. Like, I need to get, with 5 and a 2-year-old, you can't do that. They're not safe yet to be, my kids stay home for a half an hour. It's by themselves. They can do that. But with the little ones, I think is to understand that and knowing your patterns. So, for example, maybe it's worth, hear me out, getting up at 5 a.m. and finishing your school assignments. Mm-hmm. If you know that the witchy hour, if you're a parent, what I'm talking about, mm-hmm. is at 6 p.m., there is no getting over the witchy hour. You're not going to, or staying after when they go to bed if you're not tired. I personally don't function past 9 p.m. I will sooner get up at 4 a.m. and do my work than to try accomplish something mental other than cleaning dishes, at 9 p.m. So that is remembering, first of all, where am I? Here is my task list. And then looking at the task list and saying, which of those things are a must today, and putting those rocks first. There's this lovely story, you can Google it on internet, about taking a bucket, and if you put the rocks in, is it full, right? Big rocks. Well, then you pour the sand in, is it full? Then you put the water in, is it full? Now it's full. Well, but when it's full with sand, rocks, sand, and water, can you add any big rocks into it? You cannot. So the point is that you have to decide, preferably a night before, what are my 3 unnegotiable rocks? What do I really need to have done? Maybe the dishes are not going to get done. Maybe the laundry is not going to get put away, moved from laundry to the dryer, and maybe it's sitting in a dryer, and that's okay. But my big rock is my homework today. Mm-hmm. So what is the best time of the day when I can do this homework? If I know that the witchy hour is at 5 or at 6 at my household. So that's the first thing. And once you get into this space when the kids don't understand, you may want to have a basket of things to redirect them to. I used to work as a with severe disabilities, anything from autism, ADHD, Down syndrome, cerebral palsy, some very severe kids. And one of the things you can have, it's also a good trick on trips and planes, is to have a basket of things that they really like, but they don't get to play with too much. And in that emergency, this is what you give them. So that you may have that 30 minutes or 20 minutes of right? Mm-hmm. And you can finish whatever you're doing. And once they get older, they may understand that this is my work time. And you can go entertain. And in her situation, when she is a single mother, I would say there is no shame of pulling in electronics for half an hour. We do, we don't want children on electronics constantly, but there is no shame of using that crutch in a moment just to finish what you really need to do, because that's your role. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that totally makes sense. And it's in alignment with what I had suggested as well. But I think, for people that are listening, I think it's really so important for people to understand. And I love what you said about the social media, the electronics and things like that. People get so hung up on, well, I don't want to have, electronics be my child's babysitter. And we agree. But like, for example, David and I, we take clients on Mondays from 7 o'clock to 8 o'clock, and that's right normally at their bedtime. So we have that weekly appointment that we both have to be on. So what do they get to do? What they love, which is being on their device for that hour that we're there. We have to do it. They're excited because they normally don't get, devices during the week. We're actually very strict with that. And it helps everybody. So it's not a bad thing to use what we know works when you need it in those kinds of situations.
Moderation in everything, right? And it's also moderation in perfections. We want to be as good as we can be, but don't drive yourself nuts over, not having a house that looks like out of the magazine when you have 2 children. Yes. Unrealistic. Yes. I don't know if you heard this. What was the lady that did she was the Japanese organizer.
Oh, Mary Kondo.
Mary Kondo, thank you. Yeah. And all of a sudden, after having children, she changed the tone of her voice. She said it herself that, okay, not everything has to be so perfect, because I have 2 living rooms. I finish cleaning one, the other one gets trashed in the moment I'm cleaning the one here. So yeah. There has to be a healthy middle. Everything is a healthy middle. And it starts with, today I can't do anymore. And that's okay. And, for your client, it's also taking a step back. As a college professor, I like to know what my students do ahead of time. I used to teach a lot of psychology classes in college. And, if I know I have a client, I've had some students, I was teaching community college a lot. So some students were like all of a sudden experiencing homelessness. Go to your professor and talk about that. Hey, I'm a single working mom. Can I have the assignments early so I can better plan my time? Or have the human conversation, human to human. Yeah. Some of the colleges have centers that will babysit for you. Don't be afraid. You are not alone. You don't have to do all of this alone. Swap with other moms.
Yeah.
You babysit for me today. I babysit for you tomorrow. Ask the neighbor. There is, again, have that community. I coach from a perspective. My model is called, and there's a book actually coming out shortly. It's almost finished. It's going into editorial right now. Befriending your life in the flow, letting go without giving up, befriending your life through befriending your quest, befriending your body, befriending your mind, befriending your boundaries, and befriending your surroundings. Are the people around me, we're talking about relationships, are the people around me supporting me, or are they drowning me? Which ones are they? And you know what to do with the ones that are weighing you down and pulling you down.
Yeah.
Thank them for existence and let them go.
And that's hard. It's hard sometimes, especially when you're used to trying to make things work. And that's the big thing, especially, going back to the toxic relationships aspect, is when you're used to, well, I have to figure it out. I have to make it work. I'm not successful if I don't figure it out. Sometimes we have to look at what is negatively impacting our life. And sometimes what's negatively impacting our life is people around us.
Well, I will take it a step further. The past especially for women who are getting out, or even men, because we always say women, but there are two sides of this coin, getting out of toxic relationships, single mom, right? You've mentioned doing it all by herself. I can almost guarantee you that there is a ton of trauma there. And what's the trauma response? Where's the trust?
Yeah.
What is the trust? So it's another skill that we need to build of, okay, I have this trauma response that say fight or flight. So either I'm going to fight and do it all by myself, or I'm going to go and hide. And now you have to work with neurology, and that's a big part of my work. Is I work with the neurology as well. You can see behind me there is a Beamer pad with PMF, and I work with that a ton, of modulating how your body responds, because those are automatic responses. We can have positive thoughts, but your neurology, that's what it does. It can elevate your heart rate and all of that. So it's also being able to say, okay, in this moment, what's my best? Oh, goes back to that awareness. That was a trigger for me, and right now I'm in a flight and fight, right? And maybe in that moment, you cannot do anything about it because it's a physiological response. Maybe you're having a panic attack. Maybe you're having a flashback. Maybe that screaming child reminds you of your screaming husband.
That's exactly what it is.
Huge trigger, right? And now your whole nervous system is taking you, whoa, up there. And it's not pretty what's come up, because subconsciously you're fighting for your life. So that's a time when it's good to find someone who works with trauma, or I'm a big fan of EMDR psychotherapy, or coaches who specialize in trauma, or for DUVET, because some people think that they know, but they really, 5-minute training is not covering trauma.
We use something called Psyche, which is high-speed mindset. So it actually deals with the subconscious beliefs about it and works really well with trauma and very quickly. So it's a cool tool to be able to have that at our disposal, working with clients that have dealt with trauma. Because
because if you think about trauma, which is the highest end of the stress response, right? So you have the stressors that are fun because we need to have some stimulants in our life. Then you have the prolonged stress, then you have the anxiety, and then you have trauma. And then in trauma, you have trauma, PTSD, and complex PTSD, and they all different level of hell, basically is what I call it. So it's a gradual escalation of the symptoms. But all it boils down is to perception of the stimuli. Talking a very nasty behavioral language, what is a perception of stimuli? Perception of what's happening. So what's stressful for me may be totally not stressful for you, right? So if you can reprogram your perception of that, if I can reprogram my perception of screaming child as from, I take this sound of that frequency that for my brain receives it as an attack, and to switch it into compassion of saying, my poor child is having an issue, that is a much different perspective than this child is annoying and trying to do something in spite of me. But it's all about that subconscious perception of what happens in the moment, if that makes sense. I hope that makes sense.
It does.
Yes, you're right. The programming that stimuli is, yes.
And I love the conversation, but the show is over. I have to say goodbye. I thank you so much, Dr. Labrecque, for coming on and speaking with us. It goes so quickly. Tell us really, really quickly, how can people find you?
The easiest is through my website, helptogrowinstitute.com, social media, which I know you're going to be posting in links. Put in my name, how to spell, or even text me 978-995-5152, 978-995-5152.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dr. Labrecque. Thank you for coming on. Thank you for everybody for tuning in again to Kick Unhealthy Relationships to the Curb, and we will see you next week. Bye, everybody.
Thank you for having